The day the Galactic Council begged humanity for forgiveness. The enormous crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber loomed over Ambassador Jack Wilson like a transparent mountain. His footsteps echoed on the polished black stone floor as two towering guards with blue skin and multiple eyes escorted him forward. Jack fought to control his breathing. This moment would determine the fate of Earth and possibly all of humanity. The chamber held 5,000 representatives from across the galaxy. They sat in rising tiers that formed a perfect circle, their varied forms, some gaseous, some crystalline, some with too many limbs or eyes, all focused on the lone human in their midst. The air hummed with translation devices and whispered conversations in 1,000 languages. Jack had prepared for this moment his entire career, yet nothing could truly ready a human for the overwhelming reality of standing before the collected power of 1,000,000 worlds. Above him, the 7 high counselors sat on elevated platforms of gleaming metal. Their ancient faces showed no emotion as they watched Earth's first official representative approach. Human Ambassador Jack Wilson announced the tallest counselor in a voice that seemed to bypass Jack's ears and materialize directly in his mind. You stand before the Galactic Council, the oldest and most powerful governing body in known space. For the first time in 3,000 cycles, we have permitted a representative from a non-member species to address the full assembly. Jack nodded respectfully, his diplomatic training taking over despite the flutter of fear in his stomach. I thank the Council for this rare privilege. It is not a privilege, corrected another counselor, this one with golden scales and 6 arms folded across its chest. It is a necessity born of disturbing developments. Humanity has violated the non-interference directive in the Proxima Centauri system. 30 million lives lost. Explain yourself. Murmurs of outrage rippled through the assembly. Jack felt the weight of thousands of hostile stares but kept his face carefully neutral. The accusation was as expected and completely false. With respect, High Counselor Vax, humanity denies any involvement in the Proxima tragedy. In fact, we come before you today with evidence that the disaster was not natural, as your reports claim, but deliberately orchestrated by members of this very council. The chamber erupted in shouts and hisses. Security drones materialized from hidden compartments, their weapon systems humming to life. Jack didn't flinch even when a targeting laser briefly painted his chest. These are serious accusations, human, the first counselor said, raising 4 arms for silence. The chamber gradually quieted. Do you understand the penalty for false claims against the council? Molecular dispersal, Jack replied calmly. I understand completely. Without waiting for permission, he activated a small device on his wrist. The center of the chamber filled with a holographic display showing the Proxima system. The images were recorded from Earth's observation outpost, a facility unknown to the Council. The recording clearly showed 3 Council warships entering the system, deploying strange devices around Proxima's sun, then departing just before the star destabilized. This evidence was gathered by Earth's deep space monitoring network, Jack explained, as the Council watched in stunned silence. The energy signature of these devices matches exactly with theoretical models of stellar destabilizers technology that supposedly doesn't exist according to Council regulations. The first counselor leaned forward. This proves nothing. These recordings could be fabricated. They could be, Jack agreed, but this can't. He removed a small crystal from his pocket. Even from a distance, the high counselors recognized it immediately. A quantum data core, with the distinctive markings of the Council's own secure communication network. This contains the complete transmission logs between those 3 ships in Council headquarters, including the mission parameters and authorization codes. Jack held the crystal up for all to see. Our scientists recently developed the ability to intercept and decode quantum encrypted transmissions. An unexpected breakthrough that proved quite illuminating. The 7 high counselors exchanged glances, communicating silently through their neural links. Throughout the chamber, representatives began whispering urgently to their delegations. Jack had shattered millennia of certainty in less than 5 minutes. The transmission records show that the Proxima operation was a test, Jack continued, his voice carrying easily through the now silent chamber. A test of a new weapon intended for use against Earth itself. 30 million Proximans were sacrificed simply to gather performance data before the main target was engaged. If what you claim is true, the scaled counselor said carefully, why would the council target Earth? Your world has no strategic value. Your technology is primitive. Your military capabilities laughable. Jack smiled thinly. That's the interesting part, High Counselor. According to these logs, Earth was targeted because of a specific detection, something called Emergence Pattern Alpha. Does that term mean anything to the assembled representatives? Clearly it did. Throughout the chamber, the more senior delegates reacted with shock. Some actually rose from their seats, gesturing frantically to their aides. That information is restricted to council-level clearance, First Counselor said coldly. How did you... As I mentioned, Jack interrupted, we can now decode your quantum transmissions. We've been doing so for almost a year. We know about the Harvester Protocol. We know about the 87 species you've erased from existence when they showed signs of developing beyond your control. And we know that Earth has been designated as Target 88. Screens throughout the chamber suddenly activated without command, displaying classified council documents detailing the systematic suppression and elimination of species deemed evolutionarily dangerous. The council's most carefully guarded secret exposed to all 2,000 member species simultaneously. Your security systems are impressive, Jack noted conversationally as the council's technical team frantically tried to regain control of the chamber's systems. But they were designed to repel external attacks. They're quite vulnerable when the access codes are provided by someone with proper authorization. Impossible, hissed the scaled counselor. No human could break our encryption. We didn't break anything, Jack replied. We were given the codes by someone who believed the truth should be known. He gestured to one of the upper gallery positions, where a robed figure suddenly stood. High Counselor Zim has served on this council for 600 years, Jack explained as the chamber erupted once more. He provided Earth with everything we needed to expose the council's true purpose, not to maintain peace, but to prevent any species from evolving beyond the technological level of the founding members. The accused counselor stood proudly despite the chaos. For 6 centuries I have watched us eliminate promising young species because we feared their potential. No more. The suppression protocol must end. First Counselor rose to his full height, his voice thundering through the chamber. Security forces, arrest the human and Counselor Zim. This session is terminated, but the security drones didn't move. Instead, the massive doors of the chamber hissed open, and a contingent of council security forces entered, led by a human woman in an Earth Fleet uniform. Admiral Diana Foster, Earth Defense Force, she announced. The council security systems are now under our control, as are the orbital defense platforms and the main fleet in dry dock. I suggest everyone remain calm while Ambassador Wilson completes his presentation. The first counselor sank slowly back into his seat, the political reality sinking in. Somehow Earth had outmaneuvered the most powerful government in the galaxy. Jack nodded thanks to the Admiral before turning back to address the stunned assembly. Earth does not seek revenge for what was planned against us, he stated clearly. Nor do we wish to dismantle the governance structure that has maintained peace between member worlds for millennia. We seek only 2 things, he held up one finger. First, an immediate and permanent end to the species suppression protocol and the dissolution of the Harvester program. A second finger joined the first. Second, the right of all species to develop their natural technological and social potential without artificial limitation or fear of extinction. The chamber had fallen completely silent as representatives from 1,000 worlds absorbed the implications of what they were witnessing. Humanity does not want control of the council, Jack continued. We want reform. We want truth. We want a galaxy where emerging species are welcomed and nurtured, not monitored and eliminated when they show too much promise. He turned in a slow circle, meeting the eyes of as many representatives as possible. The 7 high counselors will now have a choice. They can acknowledge their crimes against countless civilizations and work toward a reformed council built on truth rather than deception. Or they can refuse and face the judgment of their own member species, who now know exactly what has been done in their name. First Counselor stared at the human ambassador with ancient eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of 100 civilizations. For the first time in 9,000 years, the council faced a challenge it could neither dismiss nor eliminate. You realize, he said quietly, that what you've done today will forever change the fundamental structure of galactic governance. Jack nodded. The day the Galactic Council begged humanity for forgiveness. The emergency session of the Galactic Council stretched into its fourth hour. The massive chamber, usually a model of order and protocol, had descended into near chaos. Representatives from 2,000 worlds demanded answers about the suppression protocol that had eliminated 87 species over 9,000 years. Ambassador Jack Wilson watched from Earth's newly assigned permanent position in the chamber. Beside him, Admiral Diana Foster monitored the Council's communication networks through an interface in her neural implant. The Orion Cluster delegates are calling for immediate resignation of all High Counselors, she murmured. The Draxis Confederation is threatening to withdraw from the Council completely. 7 major trading alliances have suspended all operations pending investigation. Jack nodded slightly. And the Harvester fleet? Still holding position at the system edge. Our defensive grid is fully deployed around Earth, but if those things are as powerful as the Council records suggest, she didn't need to finish. Both knew that humanity's remarkable coup in the Council chamber would mean nothing if the 7 planet-sized weapons decided to complete their primary mission. At the center of the chamber, the 7 High Counselors huddled in intense discussion, their privacy fields preventing even the most sophisticated eavesdropping. Finally, First Counselor Moore turned to address the assembly. Representatives of the galactic community, he began, his voice carrying the weight of 9,000 years of authority. The Council acknowledges that serious allegations have been made. We propose a full investigation by an independent committee with representatives from all sectors. The chamber erupted in shouts of protest. A tall insectoid delegate rose from the Antares sector position. Investigation? She clicked through her translator. We have seen the evidence. The Council has systematically eliminated species that showed too much evolutionary promise. This is not a matter for investigation, but for immediate justice. Moore raised all 4 hands for silence. The situation is more complex than Ambassador Wilson's presentation suggests. The suppression protocol was established during the Collapse Wars, when emerging technologies destroyed 17 systems and killed trillions. It was meant as a temporary measure until galactic civilization stabilized. That was 9,000 years ago, Jack countered, rising to face the First Counselor. How many more millennia would this temporary measure have continued? How many more civilizations would have been erased? Before Moore could respond, the chamber's main doors parted to admit an unexpected delegation. 20 beings entered, representatives of species the Council had declared extinct centuries or millennia earlier. Jack suppressed a smile. Right on schedule. The Council recognizes no delegation, First Counselor began, but his voice faltered as murmurs spread through the chamber. The leader of the new arrivals stepped forward. Her crystalline body structure identified her as Zenthari, a species supposedly destroyed by a supernova 5,000 years earlier. I am Lyra. Last Council acknowledged Prime of the Zenthari Conclave, she announced, her translator rendering her harmonic speech into standard galactic. My people were not destroyed by any natural disaster. We were targeted because our crystalline technology could detect and neutralize the Council's surveillance systems. She gestured to the beings behind her. We represent 20 species declared extinct by Council decree. We survived because a faction within the Council itself warned us of our impending elimination. We have lived in hiding, in the spaces between stars, gathering evidence of the Council's crimes for centuries. Throughout the chamber, representatives stared in shock. Many openly wept or made their species equivalent gestures of profound dismay. These are fabrications, High Counselor Vax declared. Genetic constructs created to destabilize legitimate authority. Lyra's crystalline form pulsed with colors that her translator didn't attempt to interpret. Our genetic authenticity can be verified through the Council's own archived samples. We anticipated your denial. She produced a small device that projected documents into the center of the chamber, the original suppression orders for 20 species, bearing the quantum signatures of High Counselors across 5,000 years of Council rule. Humanity found us 6 months ago, Lyra continued. Their deep space exploratory vessels detected our hidden outpost in the Oort cloud of an abandoned system. When they learned our history, they offered alliance instead of exploitation. Together we developed the plan you see unfolding today. Jack stepped forward to stand beside her. Earth didn't come to the Council seeking admission to your governance structure, he explained. We came to expose the lie upon which that structure was built. Not to destroy the Council, but to transform it into what it has always claimed to be, a guardian of peace and cooperation, rather than a suppressor of potential. High Counselor Zim, who had revealed his cooperation with Earth earlier, joined them at the Chamber's center. For too long, this council has operated on the principle that advanced technology can only lead to destruction, if not strictly controlled. We have justified genocide in the name of stability. He faced his fellow counselors directly. I have provided humanity with the activation codes for the Harvester fleet. They now control whether those weapons complete their mission against Earth or stand down permanently. First Counselor Moore's composure finally broke. You've given control of our most powerful weapons to a species that barely understands interstellar travel? The same species that nearly destroyed their own world multiple times before achieving spaceflight? This is precisely why the suppression protocol exists. That's where you're wrong, Admiral Foster interjected, stepping forward to join the growing coalition at the Chamber's center. The protocol doesn't exist because we're dangerous. It exists because you're afraid. She activated her neural implant, projecting development curves for the 87 eliminated species. Every civilization targeted showed the same pattern: rapid adaptation, creative problem-solving, unpredictable technological development paths. Not aggression, not instability. Innovation. The Admiral faced the assembled representatives directly. The founding species of the Council developed along predictable linear paths. They advanced methodically, taking thousands of years to progress from planetary to interstellar civilization. But species like ours, like the Zenthari, the Nelvan, the Ixari, we make unexpected leaps. We connect seemingly unrelated fields. We experiment. We imagine possibilities beyond established parameters. And that imagination, Jack added, terrifies the Council, not because it's dangerous, but because it's unpredictable, uncontrollable. Throughout the Chamber, representatives from hundreds of worlds began to understand the true nature of the system they had accepted for millennia. The Council hadn't been protecting galactic civilization from dangerous species. It had been protecting its own authority from innovation that might render it obsolete. What do you want? First Counselor Moore asked, his voice barely audible in the vast chamber. The question itself was unprecedented. In 9,000 years, the Council had never asked a non-member species what it wanted. It had only ever dictated terms. Jack looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from 1,000 worlds. We want a council that nurtures potential rather than fears it. We want justice for 87 civilizations erased from existence. We want the truth about our galaxy's history taught to all member worlds. He paused, letting his words settle across the assembly. And we want accountability. The architects of the suppression protocol must acknowledge their crimes before all galactic civilization. They must beg forgiveness not just from humanity, but from every species whose development they've manipulated and every civilization they attempted to erase. First Counselor Moore stared at the human ambassador with ancient eyes that had witnessed millennia of unchanging power. Now in less than a day, that power was crumbling before him. And if we refuse, Admiral Foster smiled coldly, then we release the complete Council archives to every sentient being in the galaxy simultaneously. Every secret, every manipulation, every assassination and sabotage conducted to maintain Council authority for 9,000 years. She gestured to the Zenthari and other supposedly extinct species standing with them. And we help these survivors reclaim their homeworlds and rebuild their civilizations outside Council authority, with Earth's full technological and military support. The implications were clear. Either the Council transformed itself voluntarily, or it would be bypassed entirely by a new alliance of Earth and restored civilizations. After 9,000 years of absolute authority, the Galactic Council faced an ultimatum it could neither dismiss nor overcome. First Counselor Moore looked to his fellow counselors, their private communication channel conveying volumes in seconds. Then, slowly, deliberately, he descended from the high dais where the Council had sat in judgment since its founding. He approached Jack Wilson, standing at the exact center of the chamber before representatives of 2,000 worlds, and then with a fluid grace that belied his ancient form, First Counselor Moore, the most powerful being in known space, knelt. In the name of the Galactic Council, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "I acknowledge our crimes against countless." The day the Galactic Council begged humanity for forgiveness. 3 days after the Council's unprecedented act of contrition, the Grand Assembly Hall had been transformed. Gone was the intimidating hierarchical arrangement that had placed the 7 High Counselors physically and symbolically above all others. In its place stood a circular platform where representatives from all species sat at equal height. The 7 former High Counselors now occupied regular seats among the delegates, their ancient authority stripped away by universal vote. Only First Counselor Moore had chosen to remain, serving now as historical witness rather than ruler ambassador. Jack Wilson sat at the newly formed Transition Committee alongside representatives from 30 major galactic regions and all 20 of the restored extinct species. Admiral Diana Foster stood near the chamber entrance, coordinating Earth's security team as they monitored both the proceedings and the Harvester fleet still holding position at the edge of the system. "The committee recognizes Lyra of the Zinthari," announced the facilitator, a respected diplomat from the Pleiades Confederation, who had been chosen for her species' reputation for absolute neutrality. The crystalline being rose, her faceted body refracting light in patterns that many delegates found both beautiful and unsettling. "The Restoration Initiative has completed its preliminary assessment," Lyra reported. "The Council archives contain complete biological samples, cultural records, and technological specifications for all 87 species, targeted by the suppression protocol." Shimam projected a galaxy map showing hundreds of worlds marked in different colors. 62 species can be fully restored through genetic reconstruction and cultural reintegration. Their homeworlds remain viable, though many have been reassigned to other civilizations in the millennia since their erasure. Her crystalline form dimmed slightly. For 25 species, restoration is not possible due to extreme genetic degradation or complete destruction of their original biospheres. The news sent a ripple of mixed emotions through the assembly. Hope for the 62, grief for the 25 lost forever. Jack watched the former High Counselors closely, noting how some showed genuine remorse while others maintained the impassive expressions of beings who still believed their actions had been justified. "The Transition Committee proposes a galaxy-wide restoration initiative," Jack said, rising to address the assembly. "Worlds will be set aside for the rebirth of erased civilizations. Volunteer species will serve as cultural mentors during the reintegration period. Historical records will be corrected to acknowledge the Council's crimes and restore the legacies of the eliminated species." Representatives from across the galaxy registered their approval through the new consensus system that had replaced the Council's autocratic decision-making process. Screens throughout the chamber showed overwhelming support, with only a small faction of traditionally Council-aligned worlds registering opposition. "There is another matter we must address," said Noor, the Antarian representative who had emerged as a powerful voice for reform. "The technology suppression program that has restricted development across all Council space for 9,000 years." She projected documentation showing thousands of instances where promising research had been sabotaged, brilliant scientists assassinated, and entire fields of study banned across multiple civilizations. "The Council didn't only eliminate species that developed too quickly," Noor explained. "They systematically suppressed technological advancement across all galactic civilization. Through infiltration, manipulation, and direct intervention, they ensured that no member species developed technologies that might challenge Council authority." Throughout the chamber, representatives absorbed this revelation with growing anger. Many began accessing their own historical records, identifying suspicious patterns of scientific regression and technological dead ends that suddenly made sense. First Counselor Moore rose slowly, his ancient form seeming diminished without the ceremonial robes and position of authority he had occupied for 3,000 years. "What Representative Noor says is true," he acknowledged. "The technological suppression program predates even the species elimination protocol. It began during the early Council period, when the founding species feared developments that might destabilize their control." He gestured to the galaxy map still hovering at the chamber's center. "Without this suppression, many civilizations present today would be centuries or even millennia more advanced than they currently are." Some might have surpassed even the technological level of the founders themselves. The admission sent shockwaves through the assembly. Species that had been proud of their scientific achievements suddenly realized they had been developing at artificially restricted rates for their entire history. Admiral Foster stepped forward, her military bearing commanding attention even in this gathering of the galaxy's most powerful beings. Earth proposes the immediate dissolution of all technology suppression programs, she stated firmly. All restricted research should be declassified. All banned technologies should be reevaluated by independent scientific committees with representatives from diverse species. Knowledge that has been hoarded by the Council for millennia should be shared freely across all civilizations. The proposal met with overwhelming approval and immediate practical challenges. Representatives from hundreds of worlds began raising concerns about the potential chaos of unrestricted technological development after 9,000 years of careful control. We understand the fear, Jack acknowledged, addressing these concerns directly. The Council justified its suppression by warning of destructive technologies that could threaten galactic stability. Some of those fears may be legitimate, but the solution isn't suppression, it's cooperation. He projected a new model showing collaborative development protocols and ethical oversight committees, with rotating membership from diverse species. Earth doesn't advocate technological anarchy, he explained. We propose technological democracy, where advancement is guided not by the fears of a few ancient species, but by the collective wisdom of all galactic civilization. As the Assembly debated these proposals, an alert sounded throughout the chamber. Admiral Foster received an urgent communication through her neural implant, her expression growing serious as she processed the information. "Ambassador," she called, interrupting the proceedings. "The Harvester fleet has begun moving. All 7 vessels have changed course and are now accelerating toward the Council homeworld." The chamber erupted in panic. The Harvesters represented the most powerful weapons in known space. Planet-sized automated systems designed to completely disassemble entire civilizations. With the Council's authority in chaos and control systems compromised, no one knew what protocols might be activating in these ancient doomsday devices. "Impossible," First Counselor Moore whispered, genuine fear showing on his ancient face for the first time. "The override codes should have deactivated them completely." "Apparently not," Admiral Foster replied grimly. "Our analysts believe they detected the Council's collapse and have defaulted to some kind of fail-safe protocol." Jack turned to the former High Counselors. "Is there a contingency system? Something that would activate if the Council's authority structure failed?" The 7 ancient beings exchanged troubled glances. Finally, Counselor Vax spoke, his scaled face showing clear distress. "The purification protocol," he admitted reluctantly. "If the Council falls, the Harvesters are programmed to eliminate all evidence of Council rule, including the Central Worlds and all records of Council operations." "You built doomsday devices with a dead man's switch?" Admiral Foster asked incredulously. "Programmed to destroy your own civilization if your control ever slipped?" "It was never supposed to activate," Vax insisted. "The Council was designed to last for eternity." Throughout the chamber, representatives from 2,000 worlds faced the horrifying reality. The same weapons that had eliminated 87 rising civilizations were now targeting the heart of galactic governance itself. The Council's obsession with control had created the seeds of its own destruction. "How long do we have?" Jack asked. "At current acceleration, the Harvesters will reach Galactia Prime in 72 hours, Admiral Foster reported. "Our weapons might slow them, but according to Council records, nothing in known space can stop all 7 simultaneously." "There has to be something," Jack insisted, turning back to the former counselors. "You wouldn't create weapons without some form of absolute override." First Counselor Moore's expression grew distant, as if accessing memories buried for millennia. "There is one possibility," he said slowly. "The Founder's Protocol, a quantum-locked command structure buried beneath the First Temple. It predates even the Harvesters themselves." "Then we need to access it immediately," Jack urged. "It's not that simple," Moore replied. "The protocol requires genetic verification from all 7 founding species. But 3 of those species no longer exist. They died out naturally millennia ago, their biological keys lost forever." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Council's ultimate failsafe couldn't be activated because of the very biological weakness the Council itself had, feared the natural extinction of founding members, unless Lyra's crystalline form suddenly pulsed with intense light as realization struck. The day the Galactic Council begged humanity for forgiveness. The ancient temple complex beneath Galactia Prime had not been accessed in over 8,000 years. Massive doors groaned open on mechanisms designed to last millennia, revealing chambers untouched since the early days of the Council's rule. Ambassador Jack Wilson led the expedition team through dust-filled corridors, lined with artifacts from civilizations long forgotten. Behind him came Admiral Foster, Lyra of the Zenthari, First Counselor Moore, and representatives from 30 key worlds. Each step took them deeper into the forgotten history of galactic governance. The founders established this facility before the Council itself, Moore explained, his ancient voice echoing in the cavernous space. It was created as both archive and failsafe, a place where ultimate authority could be accessed if necessary, after which they conveniently sealed it away and built their control systems on top, Admiral Foster noted dryly, ensuring no one could challenge their original programming. The team reached a massive circular chamber dominated by a crystalline structure that pulsed with faint internal light. Despite millennia without power, 7 alcoves surrounded it, each bearing symbols of the original founding species. The Founders' Protocol, Moore whispered with something close to reverence. I've seen it only in historical records. Jack checked the countdown on his neural interface. 63 hours remained before the Harvesters reached Galactia Prime. Above them, the combined defensive fleets of 200 worlds were mobilizing, a force impressive by any standard, but according to Council records inadequate against even one Harvester, let alone 7. The genetic verification system requires samples from all 7 founding species, Lyra reminded them. We've brought materials from the 4 species still extant. The remaining 3, she gestured to the specialized containers carried by her assistants. Inside each carefully preserved genetic material from long-extinct founding species waited to fulfill its final purpose. This technology predates even the Council's earliest records, Moore cautioned. We don't know exactly what will happen when the protocol activates. We don't have the luxury of certainty, Jack replied. Not with extinction approaching at faster-than-light speeds. One by one, representatives of the 4 surviving founder species approached their designated alcoves. Each provided the required biological material, blood, tissue, or their species equivalent, watching as ancient systems analyzed and verified their genetic heritage. For the 3 extinct species, Lyra carefully placed preserved samples into the remaining alcoves. Tension filled the chamber as everyone waited to see if genetic material thousands of years old would satisfy systems designed for living tissue. The crystalline structure at the chamber's center pulsed with increasing intensity as each verification completed successfully. When the 7th and final sample was accepted, the entire complex hummed with awakening energy. The air before them shimmered, coalescing into the holographic form of a being unlike any currently known in the galaxy. Tall, with iridescent skin and multiple branching limbs. Its features combined aspects of several founding species, yet belonged to none of them. Founders' Protocol activated. It announced in a language so ancient that the translation system struggled momentarily before adapting. State the nature of the existential threat requiring Founder intervention. Jack stepped forward. The Harvester fleet has activated the Purification Protocol. 7 vessels are approaching Galactia Prime with intent to eliminate all Council infrastructure and civilization. The holographic being processed this information, its form shifting slightly as if accessing ancient databases. Understood. The Purification Protocol was established as final contingency if Council governance failed or was compromised. Activating override requires verification of legitimate successor authority. There is no successor authority in the traditional sense, Jack explained. The Council structure itself is being reformed into a collaborative assembly with equal representation from all member species. The holographic guardian tilted its head, clearly struggling with a concept so different from its original programming. Insufficient parameters for verification. The Founders established the Council as absolute governing authority for all galactic civilization. No alternative structure was envisioned or permitted. Throughout the chamber, representatives exchanged worried glances. The founders' absolute certainty in their own system, the same certainty that had led to 9,000 years of suppression and genocide, was now preventing them from accessing the only hope of stopping the harvesters. Admiral Foster stepped forward impatiently. Listen to me, whatever you are. The council system your creators established has collapsed. It survived for 9,000 years by eliminating any species that showed too much potential and suppressing technological development across all civilization. That system is now rejected by nearly every species in the galaxy. The holographic being flickered, its programming clearly not designed for such direct challenge. The suppression protocols were temporary measures, it insisted. Necessary until galactic civilization stabilized. 9,000 years, Foster countered. 87 species eliminated. How many millennia would be enough? How many civilizations sacrificed before your temporary measures ended? The Guardian's form destabilized further. Ancient programming confronting questions it had never been designed to address. Jack recognized the opportunity in this moment of confusion. We don't seek to destroy the Council's accomplishments, he said more diplomatically. The peace between worlds, the cooperative structures, the shared knowledge, these are worth preserving. It's only the suppression and control we reject. The holographic being stabilized slightly. Specify proposed alternative. Jack gestured to the diverse representatives who had accompanied them. A true cooperative governance where all species participate equally. Where technological development is guided by shared ethical principles rather than fear of change. Where emerging civilizations are welcomed and nurtured rather than evaluated for elimination. The Guardian processed this information, its ancient programming struggling to adapt to concepts its creators had never considered. Such a structure was explicitly rejected by the founders, it finally stated. They determined that species diversity made consensus governance impossible. That technological advancement without strict control inevitably led to catastrophic conflict. They were wrong, Lyra interjected, her crystalline form pulsing with emotion. My people were among the first targeted for elimination because we developed differently than the founders anticipated. We created art and architecture and healing technologies. We represented no threat, yet we were deemed incompatible with their vision of controlled stability. Throughout the chamber, other representatives added their voices, describing civilizations that had thrived through cooperation rather than control, innovations that had benefited many species simultaneously, peaceful contact between radically different evolutionary paths. The holographic Guardian absorbed these accounts, its form shifting more dramatically as its programming attempted to reconcile new information with ancient directives. This evidence conflicts with founder parameters, it acknowledged. Reassessment required. The crystalline structure at the chamber's center pulsed with renewed energy as the ancient system conducted an evaluation never anticipated by its creators. Minutes stretched into an hour as representatives waited anxiously, acutely aware of the harvester fleet drawing ever closer to Galactia Prime. Finally, the holographic figure stabilized, its form now incorporating subtle elements from dozens of species beyond the original founders, as if its very appearance was evolving to reflect a more diverse understanding. Analysis complete, it announced. Founder parameters were based on limited evolutionary understanding and fear stemming from the collapse wars. Evidence suggests cooperative governance is viable despite species diversity. Technological development need not lead to conflict if properly shared and ethically guided. The being turned to face Jack directly. Harvester override codes will be provided to humanity as representative of the new galactic order. Verification. The system that eliminates potential rather than nurturing it is inherently flawed and self-limiting. Throughout the chamber, representatives who had lived their entire lives under council rule watched in amazement as the most fundamental assumptions of galactic governance were overturned by a system created by the founders themselves. The crystalline structure projected a complex series of quantum encryption keys, the true control codes for the harvester fleet. Admiral Foster immediately transmitted them to Earth's Defense Command for implementation. One condition applies, the Guardian added. The harvester technology must not be merely deactivated but transformed. These tools of extinction must become instruments of creation. Meaning what exactly? Jack asked. The harvesters were designed to disassemble matter at the atomic level and reconstruct it according to programmed patterns, the being explained. This capacity was used only for elimination. It could instead restore worlds devastated by war or natural disaster, rebuild extinct ecosystems, terraform hostile environments. The representatives exchanged stunned glances as they realized the implications. The very weapons that had eliminated 87 civil. The day the Galactic Council begged humanity for forgiveness, 5 years after the Council's collapse, the Grand Assembly convened in its new home, a massive structure floating in neutral space rather than claiming any world as its capital. The building itself represented a radical departure from the imposing, hierarchical design of the old council chamber. Here, representatives from 3,000 worlds met in a perfect circle, with no position elevated above any other. Ambassador Jack Wilson, now serving as Earth's permanent representative to the Assembly, stood on the observation deck overlooking the chamber. Beside him, Admiral Diana Foster had traded her military uniform for the formal attire of Earth's defense liaison to the new Galactic Defense Cooperative. The Restoration Project reports another successful implementation, Diana noted, reviewing the latest updates on her neural interface. The Ixari civilization has been fully re-established on their ancestral homeworld. That makes 27 species restored from the Council's genocide. Jack nodded, watching as representatives from hundreds of worlds entered the chamber below. And the technology exchange programs? Exceeding all projections, Diana confirmed. With the Council's suppression removed, advancements that would have taken centuries are being achieved in years. The Zenthari crystalline energy systems have revolutionized power generation across 200 worlds. The Nelvaran genetic restoration techniques have saved 12 species from natural extinction. And the former council worlds? Diana's expression grew more complex. Still struggling with the transition, 9,000 years of absolute authority doesn't disappear overnight, but the Reformation committees are making progress. The younger generations particularly are embracing the new galactic order. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lyra, her crystalline form now bearing the distinctive patterns of a Zenthari elder, an honor she had been denied when her civilization was targeted for elimination 5,000 years earlier. The Great Memorial is complete, she announced without preamble. Every species eliminated by the Council has been documented. Every victim has been named, to the extent possible. Every world has been remembered. Jack nodded solemnly. The memorial occupied a previously uninhabited system, transformed by repurposed harvester technology into a living museum of extinct civilizations. It served both as remembrance for those lost and as eternal warning against the dangers of suppressing diversity in the name of stability. And the final harvester conversion? He asked. Complete as of this morning, Lyra confirmed. All 7 vessels have been fully transformed from weapons of extinction to engines of creation. The last has been assigned to the Outer Rim Restoration Project, rebuilding ecosystems damaged during the resource wars. Below them, the assembly chamber had filled to capacity. Representatives from species that had been bitter enemies under council rule now sat side by side, bound together by the shared project of building a governance system based on cooperation rather than control. It's time, Diana noted, checking the session schedule. The founder's address begins in 5 minutes. The 3 made their way down to the assembly floor, taking their positions among the gathered representatives. At the chamber's center, a circular platform held 7 seats, not for rulers, but for the day's speakers, chosen for their role in the transition from council rule to the new assembly. First, Councillor Moore, now serving as historical witness, rose to address the gathering. Age had bent his once imposing frame, but his voice still carried the weight of one who had witnessed millennia of galactic history. 5 years ago today, he began, the Galactic Council acknowledged its crimes against countless civilizations. 5 years ago, we who had ruled for 9,000 years knelt and begged forgiveness from humanity and all those we had wronged. Throughout the chamber, representatives listened in respectful silence. For many, this annual commemoration served as a reminder of how quickly even the most entrenched power could fall when its foundations were exposed as fundamentally unjust. That day marked the end of one era and the beginning of another, Moore continued. The transition has not been easy. 9,000 years of carefully controlled development cannot be undone in a mere 5 years. Yet what we have accomplished together in this short time exceeds what the Council permitted in centuries. He gestured to the galaxy map hovering above the assembly, showing thousands of worlds connected by new trade routes, research partnerships, and cultural exchanges that would have been discouraged or outright forbidden under Council rule. 27 extinct civilizations restored to life, Moore noted. 342 previously restricted technologies now freely shared across all member worlds. 17 intractable conflicts resolved through cooperative mediation rather than Council decree. The former First Councilor's voice grew reflective. For 9,000 years, we who ruled the Council justified our suppression and control as necessary for galactic stability. We truly believed that without our guidance, civilization would collapse into chaos and war. He looked around the chamber at representatives from thousands of worlds, many of which had been manipulated, restricted and controlled for their entire histories. We were wrong, he said simply. The past 5 years have demonstrated what we feared most, that diverse species with different evolutionary paths and cultural values could govern themselves more effectively than we governed them. That cooperation yields greater stability than control, that nurturing potential creates more security than suppressing it. Throughout the chamber, representatives nodded in agreement. The evidence was undeniable, freed from Council restrictions. Galactic civilization had not collapsed but flourished, developing new technologies, resolving ancient conflicts, and building governance structures more responsive to the needs of all species. As Moore concluded his remarks, Lyra rose to take his place at the speaker's position. Her crystalline form caught the chamber's light, casting rainbow patterns across the gathered representatives. I speak as one who witnessed the Council's greatest crime, she began. 5,000 years ago, my civilization was deemed too unpredictable to exist within the Council's controlled order. Our crime was not aggression or instability, but innovation, developing technologies that might have freed other species from Council surveillance. She gestured to the other restored species representatives seated throughout the chamber. Each of us represents a civilization erased from existence because we developed in ways the Council could not predict or control. Our restoration serves as living testimony to both the Council's crime and the Assembly's commitment to diversity. Lyra's crystalline structure pulsed with colors that the translation systems interpreted as profound emotion. Yet we do not seek vengeance for what was done to us. The former councilors who knelt 5 years ago acknowledge their crimes and have worked sincerely to help rebuild what they once destroyed. We have chosen reconciliation over retribution, creation over punishment. The Assembly's attention turned to Jack Wilson as he rose to deliver humanity's address. As representative of the species that had exposed the Council's 9,000-year deception, Earth held a unique position in the new galactic order, not one of authority, but of respected partnership. 5 years ago, Jack began, humanity faced extinction at the hands of weapons created to eliminate any species that developed beyond the Council's comfort level. We were targeted not because we represented a threat to galactic peace, but because we represented a challenge to established control. He looked around the chamber at representatives from thousands of worlds, each with their own evolutionary path, their own unique perspective, their own potential contribution to galactic civilization. When the Council knelt before humanity and begged forgiveness, many expected us to assume the position of power they were vacating, to replace one form of centralized authority with another. Jack smiled slightly. Instead, we chose to help build something unprecedented, a true cooperative of diverse civilizations, each maintaining their unique identity while recognizing their common interests. The galaxy map above the chamber shifted to show the explosive growth in interspecies collaboration over the past 5 years. Research, partnerships that crossed traditional boundaries, cultural exchanges between formerly isolated civilizations, cooperative development projects that benefited hundreds of worlds simultaneously. This is what the Council feared most, Jack noted. Not that diversity would lead to conflict, but that it would render centralized control obsolete. Not that technology would lead to destruction, but that it would create connections their authority could not govern. Throughout the chamber, representatives nodded in understanding. The Council's 9,000-year suppression had never truly been about protecting galactic civilization from itself. It had been about preserving a system of control that benefited its founding species at the expense of all others. The day the Galactic Council begged humanity for forgiveness marked the beginning of a new era, Jack continued. But the true significance of that moment lay not in the Council's humiliation, but in what has risen from the ashes of their fallen authority. A galaxy where freedom, truth, and cooperation have replaced control, deception, and enforced stability. As Jack concluded his address, the entire assembly rose in a jest,